Hey, it's J. Maul Green here, candidate for mayor of the city of Chicago and activist. Let me just first say, one of the biggest issues in this campaign and in this mayoral race is going to be violence. I'm the only ground level candidate in a race that I've seen it firsthand, have seen people shot in front of me, and we're going to release today part one of our anti-violence plan that will be implemented in a green administration. Now, part one deals solely with the mentality. When we talk about violence, you got to talk about the root of the problems. All the other things are great. When you talk about economic development, when you talk about policing, those different things will be implemented in part two and part three of our anti-violence plan. But today is going to be solely about changing the mentality and not breeding criminals. We have two programs first that I want to introduce. It's called the YAS program, Youth Accountability Services, and the GAS program, Guardian Accountability Services. If you are a young person that commit a nonviolent offense, instead of being charged and having a record, we will make you eligible for the YAS program. That will make the young person do community service. That will make the young person get into a mentoring program for a certain amount of months, or to clean up what they've already done. If they vandalize city property, to clean up what they've done. Now, if YAS is triggered consistently, we would trigger GAS, and that's Guardian Accountability Services, which would dispatch someone to the home to figure out why the child has been behaving that way consistently. If that parent is on drugs, we would recommend rehab, or we would work with our DCFS partners. If that parent is trying, we would recommend that that parent do the certain number of community service hours with that young person to try to bridge the family. The first place that a child comes out of is a home, and that is one place we want to have programming for, to have better structures for young people. So when I talk about a child coming out of the home, there are children that don't have homes. We have tens of thousands, almost 20,000 young people who are homeless in the city of Chicago. We're going to implement a programming where Chicago Public Schools will acquire these abandoned properties and apartment buildings throughout the city. And what we'll do is we'll turn them into shelters for homeless students. All a homeless student have to do is make sure that they're going to school, completing their assignments, making sure that they're going to counseling, and keeping up the facility or their room that we give them in these buildings. So that is one thing that is dear to me. How do you expect a young person to not have a home, to not be able to eat, and then put them in a classroom and think they're going to be successful in their academics? We have to change that. We got to make sure that homeless students have a home. The second place that a child goes is the school. Now, one of my biggest things that I've been saying in this whole campaign trail is that every school in the city of Chicago, no matter what neighborhood you're in, should be on a level playing field. Schools in Inglewood should be just as good as schools in Ravenswood. But here, when I talk about the mentality, I want to talk about how we're going to make sure that students have clinical staff members in the schools and these wraparound services, because that is one of the biggest things to me. We want to make sure that we change the disciplinary process in public schools. I was kicked out of 9 schools. I went to 12, and I could have went on a different path. These wraparound services are essential. We cannot continue to cut funding when there are hundreds and hundreds of young people in these schools that need these services. So for those schools that have been cut, we're going to require 1 clinical staff member per 125 students, so that there is an equitable number of staff members in that school. We're going to also make sure that it's not detention anymore. It's going to be yoga or meditation. We have looked at other cities. And we have talked with other committees in other cities to talk about how detention is too much like jail. We need to make sure that we have a program that they can get into. If they're going to detention, they're going into yoga so that they can be taught breathing and self-control and to deal with their anger issues, and then reflect on what they've done and get on a better path going forward. That is one of the other solutions that we're bringing forth to public schools. Our mayor, Rahm Emanuel, thinks that having a longer school day is a great solution to making our kids more educated. I think that is wrong. We need a shorter school day and shift that funding to after school programs. We cannot cut after school programs and then put kids in a longer school day. When we talk about arts, when we talk about mentoring and tech programs and trade programs, that has to be implemented in our public school system for young people to act as a stimulus and really put them on a positive path going forward and teach them the skills they need to grow and thrive in their community. So, shorter school day, more after school programs. Another thing is that young people from 13 to 18, we want a year-round CEO to student internship in which small businesses and corporations can adopt students from these from public schools, teaching them the necessary skills that they would need in workforce development. And we would fund those internships in the city of Chicago. So we broke it down how we are going to have early prevention from young ages, but now we got to talk about when we're a little bit late prevention. And so when we talk about that, we got to talk about those who are offending in the city, or those who are returning from jail or prison. That is one of the biggest things to me. We cannot expect those to get out of jail and have a record and have hope to get on the right path when we are denying them job opportunities, denying them the right to vote. They do not feel like citizens. So we will establish a program. Eddie Johnson has said that we have 1,400 people that are to be shot or were to shoot. He says these are the troublemakers. We will deal with that database of people and designate $7 million a year to go towards this program, in which it's going to be a 9-month program in which offenders will, all they have to do is counseling, job training, and not offend. They will get a $1,000 stipend each month to go towards costs. We will partner them with resources if they don't have housing or if they don't have food. And at the end of that 9 months, if they don't offend and they meet with their mentor every week, we will partner them with a good job with benefits or into a trade union so they can get certified. We have to make sure that we're dealing with ex-offenders and those who are needing hope and needing a better path to succeed. We talked about how we're going to change mentality. All right, this is part one. I know it's a lot to digest, so we wanted to make sure that we put some key things in this part one of our plan. And we talked about the GAS and the YAS program, homeless students. We talked about making sure we have clinical staff members, making sure that we have yoga meditation instead of detention, making sure that young people have a path to succeed in workforce and learning skills from CEOs, and making sure that ex-offenders and those who are offending or have offended in Chicago have a program to put them on a route to success. We must talk about the root problems of gun violence in the city of Chicago. We can't continue to talk about band-aids and policing and stiffer penalties. We got to talk about how do we change the mentality and stop creating criminals in the first place. That's what we would do under a Green administration.